Hello everybody and welcome back to our 4-part remaster of ranking the easiest, hardest, best, and worst bosses in Blood Souls. Today we'll be taking a look at my choices for the 10 bosses in the franchise that are atrocious enough to fall miserably low in a series regarded well for its boss design. Keep in mind once again that I'm looking at these bosses as a veteran with every advantage available to me and that my opinions have changed over the last few years. Without further ado, here are the top 10 worst bosses in the Souls series. Number 10, Ancient Wyvern, Dark Souls 3. I like coming up with fun nicknames for bosses, so let's think of one for this mockery of a wyvern. How about Trash Bird? It's descriptive of its undeserving nature as a big dragon-type fight and describes its quality exactly. It's garbage that exists purely as a phoned-in boss in Dragonland that is supposed to let the player feel exhilarated by one-hit KOing a boss. Instead, though, I'm left with a feeling of, that was it? The puzzle mechanic itself is a bit too obtuse. You should be tipped off by the large discrepancy in damage to normal by hitting him straight up, but it's not like it's screaming at you obvious. I guess there is an arena sprawling behind him, but it's not like that place is enjoyable anyway. It's full of basic enemies, exactly what I don't want to fight in a, boss battle. Let's not sell them short either. These little snake fucks are some of the most annoyingly persistent and high damaging enemies in the base game. They shoot fireballs, charge at you with a leash range that would make even the most skittish dog jealous, and there's bigger variants throwing axes wildly. It's a mad dash to the finish line unless you want to fight every single one of these things, and I find that's never worth it. Neither is this fight, but it's forced on you to get to the great one that follows it up. Number 9, Red Dragon Demon Souls. While this boss may have only found its way to the number 9 spot on our list, don't be mistaken, it's the number 1 winner of the most boring boss in the series. In fact, it's so boring I was unwilling to go out of my way to get a bow in my recent playthrough to kill the damn thing, because it's seriously a matter of sitting in a spot for 10 minutes and shooting arrows while in no danger whatsoever. I can understand that Demon Souls had limitations, and a full-on dragon fight may have been hard to execute at this phase in the franchise, but we got Calamite less than 3 years later on the same console, so it couldn't have been that far off. In fairness, you don't actually need to kill the dragon. It's only there to be a level hazard, and it doesn't give you anything other than 10,000 souls and an opportunity to safely grab some loot in the first area of the Balatarian Palace. But none of that matters when we're here to talk about boss fights, and this one is so dreadfully boring from a mechanical perspective that I find it's a fight I rarely bother with. The only reason it's not higher on the list is the boredom is all I have against it. At least it's not a load of unfair crap even if it is lazy. Number 8, Royal Rat Authority, Dark Souls 2. Speaking of unfair crap, the Royal Rat Authority finds itself here less for being a generic Sith ripoff and almost entirely for those 4 toxic rats that make this fight make or break in the first 10 seconds. If you kill them all before you get toxic, it's a laughable win. If you get toxic though, you better kiss your souls goodbye. Problem is that it feels almost as if it's up to chance whether you get toxic or not. The rats always attack in the same way, but you have to rely on their placement and running at you and hope you kill them all in one fell swoop. If you don't, you'll be draining health faster than you can expect to have patience for this underwhelming furball. Number 7, Demon Fire Sage, Dark Souls Remastered. A banner representation of the prime problem with the Demon Ruins, the Fire Sage is the epitome of all the retreaded bosses that comprise this awful area. He does have a neat tidbit about being a master pyromancer that stayed close to the Witch of Izalith, so it makes sense that he'd be on fire, but he could have been a much more interesting demonic form since he carried such influence within the art of pyromancy. Instead, he is not the first, but the second reskin of the opening boss. Point blank, this boss is a victim of From Software's inability to realize their vision in a dramatically important area in the game's final hours and is a prime example of why it's so hated by the community and myself. Number 6, Dragon God Demon Souls. Ballista Simulator 2009 is still kicking and still shit in the bed. Right off the bat, I want to say that the idea of incorporating a stealth fight into Souls is unique and intriguing at first thought, but if you spend more than a few seconds putting it into practice, you'll realize that stealth makes absolutely no sense in a game that is centered around face-to-face combat. That means I have to think that the developers put no thought into it whatsoever themselves, so here we are. Ultimately, there's a part of me that praises Demon Souls for taking risks like this to see what would work for the future of the franchise and what wouldn't. Heck, even me saying this fight makes no sense from a design perspective and ends up being atrocious as a result doesn't mean that I wouldn't love for FromSoft to prove me wrong in a future entry with a badass stealth fight. But as it stands, not only is a fight annoying for how hard you can get fisted for the slightest mistake or even an embarrassment in design, it's most importantly a disappointment on a boss that was touted all over the branding of the game. It doesn't even come close to living up to that potential, but at least it can wear the number 6 worst boss in the franchise badge with shame from now on. Number 5, Ancient Dragon, Dark Souls 2. As we creep into the top 5, we begin to move away from bosses that I roll my eyes at and slog through to bosses that I truly hate. The Ancient Dragon is by far the hardest boss on this list, and it's for all the wrong reasons. This beast only has a few attacks, but you better believe the one you'll be seeing most often is his hover and flame down the arena special. What's particularly special about it is that it covers such a large portion of the arena that if you aren't flawless in chasing his tail, you're gonna be burnt to a crisp. Even if you stockpiled HP like a hoarder, it's doubtful you'll manage to survive it. His other attacks are similarly survivable, but sometimes he'll summon energy from all of the Dark Souls 2 shitboxes and end your life because fuck you! Seriously! What hit me? What the fuck hit? I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how absolutely gargantuan his health bar is too, so in a fight where you could be one-shot at any moment even if you play flawlessly, it's up there as one of the longest fights in the series. In a game celebrated for its fair difficulty, the Ancient Dragon stands out as one of the finest examples of when that barometer can be skewed as far in the wrong direction as possible and manage to be incredibly boring all the same. Number 4, Moonlight Butterfly, Dark Souls Remastered. Resident Sleeper, get on the fucking ground, because if I remember correctly, Moonlight Butter doesn't fly, you idiot! That's this fight in a nutshell. You're stuck waiting in boredom for this fucking bug to make its way to the ground. That is, unless you have a ranged build, which makes this fight a joke and similarly deserving of a spot on this list. Frankly, it just blows my mind how long it actually stays up in the air before coming down. I can understand that for this fight to be engaging in any way, there needs to be danger to the player, but it just doesn't work with this design. The magic is easy to dodge, and even if you screw up, you'll have plenty of healing and time to do so. So it's an eternity of waiting, and unless you have endgame stats, you likely won't be able to kill it in one landing. You may be wondering what makes this boss so much worse than Red Dragon. Well, at least that guy has a purpose as a level hazard. That, and at least you can watch TV and chuck your arrows at the same time in a rhythm to cure your boredom. This fight requires you to pay attention, but that's what makes it even worse. I'm forced to stare at this butter bitch until it finally fucking lands. Ah! Number 3, Belfry, Gargoyles, Dark Souls 2. God, I hate these gargoyles. They are the pure essence of a gank fight done wrong. You're stuck on a roof that not only limits your maneuverability by forcing you to keep away from the edges, but there's no cover to break up the aggro because it's an empty expanse. There are 6 of them and they spawn on a timer as you fail to kill the other gargoyles quickly. They are resistant to a lot of types of damage and have loads of health. And they're a shittier reskin of a pretty cool fight from Dark Souls 1 that was already a retread of a fight from Demon Souls. The gargoyles have incredible closing speed, wide-ranged attacks, and when you mix that in with the small arena and outnumber predicament, you end up needing to tank damage and attack quickly or be overwhelmed. It feels like a mad dash that had no thought put into it. Its design is lazy, and it's another boss slapped onto the Dark Souls 2 experience to cement its quantity over quality philosophy. This fight is the antithesis of fun. In fact, I regularly avoid it, and if I do it, I always wait until the end of the game when I can do massive damage and end it quickly. At least it's optional, unlike our final 2 craptastic battles. Number 2, Halflight, Spear of the Church, Dark Souls 3. More like half right. Or quarter right. Or not right at all. This boss is the epitome of my asshole. You might be asking yourself, do you mean PvE Halflight or PvP Halflight?
¿Por qué no los dos?
No, fuck that. No cheering. PvE Halflight is shit, PvP Halflight is shit, and Judicator Argo is such a big piece of shit you'd have trouble flushing him away. I mean that in a literal and figurative sense. This fight starts off with the lecture, because I know when I boot up my masochism melee simulator to fight for my life, the first thing that comes to my excited mind is a real-time monologue. Worst part, you can't skip any of his texts. If you want to silence the oaf by killing him, good luck. Unlike the last giant and the giant lord before him, this big bitch is wizened up and has a skirt to protect his leg movements, and the lanky bastard is too big for you to reasonably see his arms. Panning the camera up is about as useless as killing him. Either way, he dies and summons a painting guardian, but I'll be damned if I don't risk getting smacked around like a ragdoll to make it go quicker. The painting guardian is fine. It's a painting guardian with a boatload of health. Now here's where the fight differs. Let's start with PvE. You're offline, you'll be invaded by an NPC character. First of all, 0 points for creativity, FromSoft. Where is your artistic integrity? What really makes this fight suck is the sum of its parts. On the surface, the idea of having a unique tool that lets the player shoot spears in a line and not only have the potential of damaging the other player, but leaving it as an area of effect to wall off that player is pretty neat. So is it automatically respawning soul mass, but then again, that's copied and pasted from the old monk fight in Demon Souls, so that's hard for me to praise too much. Halflight has 3 flavors, one-handed with a sword, two-handed, and using a bow. The one-handed mode makes him a parry god, so don't you dare. Two-handed has him spamming weapon arts with unlimited mana and gives you minimal attack windows, so you're really best waiting for the bow to come out and punishing him on it. Problem is, when you add it together with the soul mass, spears, and the fact that he's a little too attached to his sword, it makes this fight a drawn-out snorefest. Add in that halfway through you have to manage a painting guardian that can heal him, it makes it all the more of a clusterfuck. It's plain out not enjoyable, boring, and the mechanics aren't cohesive whatsoever. Then there's the PvP version. Put simply, it's hilarious that you can kill a boss in a matter of 5 or so hits. Even more hilarious, the player is unable to heal. Sure, they get the added bonus of spears, soul mass, and the painting guardian, but they are overall at a severe disadvantage. That's because you can heal all day long. It's a matter of your resources far outweighing your opponent's. Sure, you have to overcome another player's ingenuity, but there's no guarantee the invader will actually be good, making this skill gap for this fight wildly inconsistent. Even if they are good, you have up to 15 Estus charges while they're stuck with a big goose egg. I know the diehard honorable duel community might say, this is a PvP fight, don't heal you pussy, get good. Well, they get 2 painting guardians to help them, and I don't give a shit about your rules. Dark Souls has and always will be to me a game that is meant for you to survive by any means necessary. But I understand drawing your own personal line. For me, I draw the line at summoning people because I want to win on my own merit, but you can happily bring a bunch of phantoms along for the fight and gank the shit out of the invading boss. Normally, he'd be more likely to get help with you using the dried finger, but he's in a boss fight, so no dice. Finally, this fight is most egregious for its placement in the DLC. It's right before Gale, one of the finest bosses in all the games. But when I go to a restaurant to get lobster, I don't want someone to drop dog shit in front of me as an appetizer. Halflight absolutely should have been the optional boss because Midir is well within Gale's League of Excellence, and it's a shame that it's a choice to overcome Midir. I can see the reasoning of wanting the Spear of the Church gimmick to be more active by making it force, but all it does is force me to relive this nightmare anytime I want to pay a visit to Fake Guts. So for that laundry list of reasons, Halflight deserves not only a spot on this list, but one right up near the top. But we've got one final boss to shit the bed. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody, the #1 worst boss in the entire Souls series, Bed of Chaos, Dark Souls Remastered. I was so close. So damn close! I thought to myself before replaying Dark Souls in the remaster this year, maybe the Bed of Chaos isn't as bad as I remember. Yeah, I mean, it's not good by any stretch of the imagination, and it's always gonna be one of the worst bosses in the series, but maybe it's not the worst. The absolute madman almost did it. Oh, it's the fucking worst. If we want to pile on Dragon God for forcing stealth into Souls, then you better believe I'm gonna fire shit out of a cannon to pile it all onto the bed of bullshit for forcing us to do platforming in Souls. I love platforming! How dare you do such a disservice, FromSoft? It's not just that you have to platform either. The floor falls out from under you in such a sudden way that I couldn't blame you for accidentally walking in all on your own. It draws your eyes, which is problematic because the Bed of Chaos will happily sweep you right into said holes. Positioning is a legitimate part of combat in this game, but it doesn't feel the same here when you only have a single way of fighting the boss and spend most of your time dodging with the floor falling out from under you. That's right, we've got to mention the only way to actually damage it is to make your way to both of its sides and smack a root once. And once that's done, you need to make a leap of faith into the center and smack a bug once. It's pathetic from a melee combat perspective, which is, you know, the core gameplay of Dark Souls. But I'm a man of reason. If you don't think the Bed of Chaos is the worst boss in the franchise, I welcome you to tell me why in the comments below. Because as always, these rankings are just my opinion. Tell me what bosses in the series you find the most awful. Our Batman D-Modathon is fully underway, so be sure to check out our adventures with the Cape Crusader. Our next 2 videos will be the Nier Automata ranking to close out the marathon, and we still have our community ranking for Hollow Knight. And then of course we have the best bosses in the Souls series to remaster as our final part in this series. I encourage you to subscribe for those videos and more, and check me out on Twitch sometime if you'd like to see my marathons live. Thank you all for your patience while videos have been more irregular. I lost my voice for a while sick, and I'm also in the middle of a move, and that's putting a bit of strain on my schedule. I'll do my best to keep pumping out more of the content you all love. And of course, thank you all for watching today's video. Much love to you, and I'll see you in the next one.